Coming up on We Talk News this week, the United States legalizes cannabis in their own Virgin Islands, but there's bupkis coming out of D.C. on the reform movement. And the Florida legislature is trying to circumvent democracy by passing THC limits on the adult use market that doesn't even exist yet, but it is on the ballot this fall. Germany's government coalition is ready to accept legal adult use of cannabis in April of this year. And is cannabis a cure for the treatment and eradication of skin cancer? A major breakthrough in the treatment of melanoma skin cancer with cannabis concentrate. Plus, the state of Georgia is filing a lawsuit against some of the biggest brands in the business over selling hot hemp products. Those are the hemp products that exceed the 0.3% THC threshold that defines the plant at all. All that and cannabis coast-to-coast news coverage on We Talk News with Alaina Pinto. Next.
We are Pro-Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of We Talk News, Pro-Cannabis Media's weekly roundup of cannabis news from coast to coast. I'm Alaina Pinto. So once again, there was a little movement from the feds over their intent to reschedule cannabis away from the most restrictive Schedule I category of the Controlled Substances Act. But that announcement will happen at some point. But now reports are something should happen by the end of March. So first it was days and weeks, and now by the end of next month. Andrew Behringer, our man in the Washington, D.C., has more.
I'm Andrew Behringer, and this is the D.C. area report for We Talk News. Vice President Kamala Harris is facing scrutiny after claiming in a recent video appealing to young voters that the Biden administration has changed federal marijuana policy to ensure people aren't jailed just for using cannabis. However, advocates counter that while steps have been taken, concrete policy changes have yet to materialize. In the video, Harris cites President Biden's move to pardon some federal cannabis possession offenses, as well as urging a review to reschedule cannabis from Schedule I category. Critics point out federal cannabis laws and policies remain unchanged. Cannabis possession is still federally illegal and formally classified as having no accepted medical value and high risk of abuse, on par with drugs like heroin. A pending recommendation to move cannabis to Schedule III would constitute a major shift, yet even that lesser category means cannabis could still potentially lead to arrests, despite Harris's suggestion that there should be no jail time just for smoking cannabis. On top of the misleading statements, the informational maps in the video incorrectly labeled which states have actually legalized cannabis. Many Americans continue pressing Biden to fully deliver on campaign pledges to decriminalize cannabis. In Maryland news, next week, committees in the Maryland House of Delegates and Senate will hold hearings on bills HB 525 and SB 513. These proposals seek to protect employees who responsibly use cannabis products legally allowed under state law while not at work. The legislation prohibits employers from discriminating against or penalizing workers only for their off-duty cannabis use. If passed, most companies would not be permitted to punish staff who test positive for cannabis or deny jobs to applicants with a history of cannabis consumption. We will continue to follow this story as it unfolds. I'm Andrew Behringer, reporting for We Talk News.
If you look at the history of cannabis reform in this country, many states create ballot questions for the people to vote on, and others use their existing legislatures for reform. Well, the state of Florida, for example, has a bustling medicinal market with over 800,000 registered patients. That state did collect enough signatures to get the adult use question on the ballot in the fall, while their Attorney General, Ashley Moody, continues to try to block it. The final decision is up to the state Supreme Court to decide if the wording of the question is too confusing to voters. So rather than sit around and wait for the people to speak, some state legislators are trying to pass a pair of bills that would cap THC percentage in flower at 30% and 60% for concentrates. The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, NORML, opposes caps on any THC products, but the Florida legislature is going to try to implement changes before the people decide at the ballot box. While THC is the intoxicating cannabinoid in the plant, many consumers use this percentage as their main buying decision at legal dispensaries. Growers and other cannabis researchers recognize that THC percentage is not indicative of the intensity of its effects. It's just one of many factors. We know the people of California understand this, and so does our correspondent from the Golden State, Alaina Pinto.
I'm Alaina Pinto with the Bay Sesh reporting for PCM with this week's California report for Weed Talk News. A newly proposed California bill could change the state's cannabis and hemp industry. Bloom Holdings are trying to buy 3 cookie stores, and the cops are having a bong sale. On February 7th, California Assemblymember Aguilera Curry introduced AB 2223. The proposed bill would allow cannabis businesses to use hemp, ban synthetic Delta-8 THCO and THCA, add more restrictions to the total THC standards, and add more requirements for hemp products in general. In other news, Bloom Holdings is making big moves this year after divesting out of their cultivation operations earlier this month. They announced on February 14th that they are trying to buy 3 retail locations in Sacramento, 1 cookie stores and 2 lemonade stores, all of which are cookie stores. And the cops are having a bong sale. Yep, that's right. Friday, February 16th will be the first official cannabis industry property auction. According to a February 8th press release from the CTDFA, of the 10 cannabis businesses busted, 9 were illegal businesses and 1 was a legal dispensary with unpaid taxes. Proceeds from the auction will apply towards more than $14.4 million in unpaid taxes owed by the 10 operations. Items will be sold as is and include bongs, among other things. I'm Alaina Pinto from the Bay Sesh reporting for PCM with this week's California report for Weed Talk News.
Headlines can be deceiving in print. For instance, the United States is legalizing cannabis in the Virgin Islands. The separate governments of the group of islands that include St. John, St. Thomas, St. Croix, and 50 other islands make up this federal territory finally passed a regulation initially approved in January of last year. And now they have moved ahead with regulations and a board that will start to take applications for licensure this summer. But nothing will be sold legally before 2025, okay? The plant has been decriminalized, though, in the Virgin Islands since 2019. So next year, the snow bunnies from the north can vacation in the Virgin Islands and enjoy their favorite plant medicine. Here's Amy Carter with the Michigan Cannabis Report. They know a lot about that there in Michigan.
Amy Carter with Michigan Weedsters for this week's Weed Talk News. In Michigan, January cannabis sales totaled $242 million, according to the Cannabis Regulatory Agency, with $240 million for adult use sales and just over $2 million sold to medical marijuana patients. The January total represented a big drop from the record-breaking $280 million sold in December. Loom Cannabis Company plans to take over the large cannabis grow facility that's being abandoned by competitor SkyMint. Loom signed a letter of intent on Friday to become the leasee of a 56,000 square foot Harvest Park facility in Diamonddale, which is near Lansing. Eventually, the Diamonddale operation will become its exclusive location for its live resin product called Loom Gold Label, which is a concentrate product used in vapes and in smokable cured form. I'm Amy Carter from Michigan Weedsters with this week's Weed Talk News.
Another part of the world that continues to move forward towards adult use legalization is Germany. This week, another political hurdle was overcome, and once a final parliamentary vote happens in March, legalization in that European nation could happen. In Canada, legalization continues to work with a few hiccups. So here's our correspondent from the north, Debbie Facey.
This is Debbie Facey, your Canadian correspondent with this week's Canadian Strain. So what we have in Canada this week, it's not too much grand news, but some news I should say. First, what we have is that the famous Jones beverages have now been able to sign on with Tilray to create a Mary Jones, which is going to be a beverage that's going to be here in Canada, which has been a bit of a waiting contract that the Jones company has been wanting to get into the cannabis, I want to say edibles or beverage industry. And this is just going to be a starting point for them to be able to make more products under the Mary brand. The next thing that we have in Canada is a expo that's going to be coming in March called the Can Expo. It's something that is geared towards the bud tenders, the retailers, and the brands to come together for the 3-day conference to educate, to elaborate, and to also demonstrate any new products that are coming to the market. And that would also be a great opportunity for many of the consumers and bud tenders and stores and retailers that are out here in Ontario. This is your Canadian correspondent, Debbie Facey, with the Canadian Strain this week. Peace.
One of the biggest developments with the building acceptance of cannabis as a medicinal product is the research that is being done on its impact. Now, there is a study coming out of Australia that documents the treatment of skin cancer with cannabis concentrate. Dr. Ava Bakari did the research that showed a specific cannabis extract will bind to receptor sites on particular melanoma cells and basically tricking these cells to self-destruct. According to the American Cancer Society, skin cancer melanoma impacts only 1% of people who get the disease, but it's a large majority of deaths from this type of skin cancer. Certainly worth more research, though, for sure. Okay, here's Harry Bernstein with our Ohio Cannabis Report this week.
This is Harry Bernstein with Verde Compliance and the Ohio Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. It's been pretty quiet regarding Ohio's entry into the adult use market, but we finally got some news this week. Although the legislature has been pretty slow to develop the infrastructure for Ohio's adult use market, the Division of Cannabis Control just released proposed regulations, and they've got good news for both Ohio consumers and medical dispensaries. To get the voters what they want, the division has proposed a special dual-use license with no application fees. This would streamline the process for allowing medical dispensaries to begin selling adult-use items, making both license holders and consumers very happy. The state is actively accepting public comments on these regulations until February 27th, so this is your chance to have a say in shaping Ohio's adult-use cannabis marketplace. Have any ideas? Now's the time to speak up. While regulations are coming together, there's another crucial piece of the puzzle still missing: action from the legislators. And unfortunately, they're still in no hurry. Ohio voters approved adult use legislation over 3 months ago, but Ohio lawmakers haven't exactly followed up with lightning speed. The Ohio House hasn't taken any action on bills passed by the Senate. These bills would make major changes to the laws that the voters have already passed. With this lack of urgency and an early September deadline to open adult use sales, we're all waiting to see how Ohio's adult use market's going to shake out. One legislator, though, is putting fellow lawmakers on notice that further delays are not going to be tolerated by the voters. Representative Juanita Brett isn't shy about telling politicians to get with the program. She's warning colleagues that undermining the legalization voters passed could ruin their election chances. There's specific pushback against changes that divert marijuana tax revenue to law enforcement instead of to equity programs. Representative Brent is crystal clear. She represents her constituents, and ignoring them, and ignoring the people who put her in office is a gamble politicians might not want to take. One thing is clear: the path to adult use cannabis in Ohio isn't exactly straightforward. There's regulations developing, there is amendments potentially to the law going on, and the public is extremely eager to get the adult use program rolling. That's it for the Ohio Cannabis Report for this week. I'm Harry Bernstein with Verde Compliance Partners reporting for Weed Talk News.
One of the biggest issues with hemp cultivation is keeping that plant under the 0.3% THC limit. There is talk in that industry about a campaign to increase it to 1%. But manufacturers are already using hemp and Delta 8 to create legal products that can get you high but are unlicensed. The term hot hemp is used to describe this group of products that are untested and unfortunately available for sale at unsuspecting gas stations or convenience stores. This is already happening in Missouri, and now that state legislature might be getting involved to protect their already flourishing legal adult use market. Brandon Jones is our Missouri correspondent, and while he is still euphoric over his Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl win in back-to-back years, he is shaken up over the tragedy of a mass shooting that marred the city's championship celebration.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with B Green Distribution with Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. And yes, there is more legalization talking about changing the laws here in Missouri, and now we're not talking about cannabis, we're actually talking about hemp. So I had quite a few of my friends that went to Jeff City to sit down for the hearing where they are talking about what some people call as hot hemp or THCA and trying to figure out, what are they going to do to change and address these laws? What about all those businesses that went under business thinking this is the law and follow those laws and now have existing businesses? I don't know. Maybe we should have people that understand the science writing the laws. So then maybe the laws will make sense and there won't be loopholes that people can just, find a way to actually get the people the product that they want, and then now we're going to backtrack. So I just really wish that people that are writing the laws would understand the science behind it, and then we can get a real law that everybody makes sense. We can find a common ground and understand that people need their medicine, but they need to be regulated. We need to understand that they're getting safe products to do what they say they're going to do. That's all. Thank you very much. Please have people that know what they're doing do it. That's all. And on a little bit of a I don't know how to describe this note, but yes, I am in Kansas City. I did have a member that was inside the Westin Hotel, and me and my 4-year-old were actually supposed to be there. Kind of talking about it kind of makes me get a little shaky. So yes, she was with her 13 and 9-year-old, heard the intercoms go off. Please seek shelter, go to your rooms. Do not come out of your room until we have told you it's all clear. I know people that knew the person that has been deceased. She was a person in the music scene that was a DJ and just very well respected. And she was there with her family. A lot of the kids that were injured, at least only 3 are still in the hospital, but this was a family function. Like I said, I was planning on taking my 4-year-old. There were more kids injured in this incident than adults. It's very sad, and I just don't know how to address this other than to say, I'm hurting. A lot of people in Kansas City are hurting, and we just want everyone to be safe, get well, and take this dark cloud away from Kansas City. So I'm Brandon Jones with B Green Distribution with Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Thanks a lot, guys. Stay educated and medicated. Have a great week.
The state of Georgia is now suing some major California brands for selling supposedly legal hemp products and passing them off as THC marijuana. Cookies and Stizzy and 12 other brands are being charged with racketeering, with mislabeling of products for sale that fail to qualify as hemp because they are too hot with THC. The state is seeking $150 million in damages. And whenever you talk about anything involving legalization, we check in with Thomas Howard from Cannabis Legalization News in Illinois.
Hey, everybody. I'm Tom with Weed Talk News, a lawyer out of Illinois, to bring you up to date as to this whole bevy of bills that have been introduced as it is the new year. We're going to go through the top ones right now, starting with HB 4890. That is a DUI bill. They are going to try to make it illegal for you to use cannabis within 2 hours of driving. We don't support that one. And then there is a compassionate use bill, SB 3287. That is seeking to remove excluded offenses. You see, you could have been caught with too much weed or had something that prevented you from getting a job in the industry. And this bill and another one that was filed in the House, its sister bill, are seeking to change that aspect of our cannabis laws. Next, we have HB 5306. That changes the Industrial Hemp Act to regulate hemp-derived cannabinoids and make a licensing process for hemp shops that want to sell Delta 8 or gummies, the stuff that can get you high, but they call hemp and they don't have to play by the rules. And then also we have SB 3480. That one is going to try to change the medical bill to allow for an interesting issue of a hybrid license. So all these social equity licenses that are being issued within 30 days of their issue, they could apply to also serve medical patients. Currently, most dispensaries in Illinois are only adult use, with only the ones that go way back about 10 years ago being medical use. And this may help the social equity licenses have higher revenues because they could serve cannabis patients as well as adults. And those are a few of the most important bills that were filed in Illinois in the past week. Thank you so much for tuning in, and catch us on Sundays over at CLN.
The race to becoming the 25th state to legalize adult use of cannabis continues, with the Pennsylvania governor, Josh Shapiro, making his pitch to his legislature last week. And now the 50th state, Hawaii, has started its legalization movement with a public hearing this week for a full adult use market with regulations and guidelines that would allow adult sales to begin in January 2026. You have to think that Pennsylvania is closer to legalization than that date for sure. No problems like that in Arizona, but they have other issues, as Karen Black explains in her Arizona Cannabis Report.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. If you were planning to attend the Imperious Cannabis Expo in Phoenix in a couple weeks, you may want to check your airline's refund policy. Originally scheduled for February 23rd and 24th, the expo was quietly postponed to August 9th and 10th. Who wants to come to Phoenix in August? Conference organizer Eric Norton did not respond to my request or others for refunds, and he has been deleting questions and comments from social media. Allegations of fraud and threats of lawsuits are swirling because industry insiders claim the convention center never even had the expo on its schedule. The whole affair is part of a troubling trend of cannabis conference cancellations. If you still want to visit Arizona when the weather is nice, you have another chance. The inaugural Arizona Growers Cup will be held March 30th in Tempe. For more information, visit arizonagrowerscup.com. Speaking of contests, the 2023 High Times Phoenix Cannabis Cup People's Choice winners were announced this week. Arizona brands took home a dozen awards across 9 of the 12 categories. A complete list of winners can be found at hightimes.com. Now for legal news. Here's an update on the 10 cannabis bills in the Arizona House. 5 measures are progressing: imposing restrictions on cannabis advertising, adding fines for drug possession in school zones, adding testing and signage requirements for medical dispensaries, giving $10 million to the health department to cover the cost of medical cards for veterans, and quite notably, allowing interstate cannabis commerce, pending a change in federal policy, that is. 2 have failed in committee, proposed licensing changes and changes to the regulation of hemp-derived products. 3 other measures have stalled, one about the uses and enforcement of cannabis funds, another about tenants' use of cannabis, and the third allowing the sale of cannabis in unincorporated areas of Indian reservations. Meanwhile, in the Senate, the mirrored hemp regulation bill passed the majority caucus, and a measure about hemp-derived impairing cannabinoids is progressing. Senate Bill 1262, which is very interesting, would make sweeping changes to Arizona's social equity license program, is also moving forward. And, like in the House, a measure about the uses and enforcement of cannabis funds has stalled. And finally, 2 of Arizona's cannabis legal legends have reunited. Ryan Hurley has returned to Rose Law Group as chair of the cannabis department. Mr. Hurley, known locally as the father of cannabis law, was instrumental in shaping the state's medical cannabis initiative back in 2009. Rose Law Group was the first firm in Arizona to organize a cannabis practice. That's all for this week's Arizona Cannabis Report. I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting reporting for Weed Talk News.
We Talk News is sponsored by the Union Square Travel Agency, a new travel agency in New York City. This Union Square Travel Agency specializes in journeys of a different kind. They sell cannabis. Visit them at 13th and Broadway in New York City or log on to unionsquaretravelagency.com. Cannabis can impair concentration and coordination. Do not operate a vehicle or machinery under the influence of cannabis. Concerned about your cannabis use? Text HOPENY or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or visit oasas.ny.gov/Hopeline.
What is going on in New York? Every week, there seems to be another delay or lawsuit being filed. In the meantime, some already existing licensees are creating alliances to make that industry stronger. Christopher Smith has some news from Jenny's in this week's New York Cannabis Report.
I'm Christopher Smith, bringing you the New York Report for Weed Talk News, testing your post-production skills. 5 quick stories from the anemic New York cannabis industry market today. The state has approved a bunch of new licenses this week, which means we're up to about 50 licenses or 50 licensed dispensaries for a state of 20 million people. So that's about 400,000 customers for each store, so we're fine. Never mind the 8,000 illegal stores that are selling all their weed for half price. We're fine. 2 weeks ago, I asked a question on this show: how can federal law be used to protect someone in a business that's federally illegal? Well, a New York judge must have been listening to your show, Alaina and Jimmy, because after 2 California gents sued for access to the New York market, saying that keeping them out violated their rights under the Dormant Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution, Albany Judge Ann Nardaki said that the main purpose of the Dormant Commerce Clause does not apply to the federally illegal cannabis trade, just like I predicted 2 weeks ago. And did I tell you that I also predicted the Chiefs would win the Super Bowl? I got a hot hand, people. Keep an eye on it. Speaking of interstate commerce, here's a case that should go the other way in the Empire State. You might remember that there are 1 million commuters into New York every single day. Well, the problem for the ones who have cannabis cards in their home states, is that they can't use them in New York to buy the medicine that they sometimes badly need. State Senator Jeremy Cooney has proposed an interstate reciprocity for medical marijuana cards. And frankly, I think that's the only logical solution. Keeping people from their medicine is patently immoral, and this proposal is both humane and balanced. Finally, I like to tweak the noses of my Cali friends every once in a while whenever I get the chance. This Friday, true story, this Friday, in the parking lot of the California Highway Patrol office, or the California Highway Patrol Los Angeles headquarters, the coppers are going to auction off bongs and various accessories that they have seized from illegal cannabis shops. Come on, fellas, you think anybody's going to buy a bong from a copper? And what happened to all the weed that was confiscated, by the way? Why doesn't the state test it and then give it away to poor people with medical marijuana cards? If you can answer the riddle of the missing weed, please let me know. I'm Christopher Smith, bringing the New York Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News.
Idaho, Nebraska, and Kansas are 3 states who continue to hold the line in support of prohibition of even the smallest possession of cannabis. Well, now Idaho is looking into implementing a mandatory fine of, get this, $420 for any possession of cannabis under 3 ounces. It would still be a misdemeanor, but if their lawmakers find that fine amount to be cute, maybe they should spend more time looking at the medicinal benefits of the plant and the science and the research that supports it. Well, no such issue in a state that borders Idaho, Washington State, which is where we find Matthew Friedlander.
I'm Matthew Friedlander, coming to you from the owner's office here at Skagit Organics with the Washington State Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. So I have some good news concerning cannabis legislation here in Washington. The bill to remove the 37% excise tax for medical cannabis patients on medically compliant products, DOH compliant products, has passed the House. That is the first time this bill has passed that chamber. It has passed the Senate in previous years, so we expect this bill to make it all the way through to the governor's office. I want to give a big thank you to the Cannabis Alliance for putting some effort into getting this passed. This bill was dead as of the end of January, but the Alliance learned of this news and went to work on the back end and convinced the Speaker of the House here in Washington to move this legislation through. So congratulations on that. The Cannabis Alliance will also be hosting a town hall in Olympia on February 22nd on social consumption. There still is no legal social consumption here in Washington. While that may not sound like a big deal, that is an issue for people who do not own their homes. If they rent their home or live in federal housing, they may not be able to safely consume cannabis in their own domicile. Northwest Leaf will be hosting their Leaf Bowl March 23rd. This will be their second annual here in Washington. This is their awards show celebrating all the great companies and products here in Washington. We are really looking forward to that event. So if you're in Washington, 2 events to look forward to. That's what I've got for you. My name is Matthew with the Washington State Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Now it's the time to check which of the cannabis stocks has imploded this week. Our man who is high on Wall Street is Doug Miller.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's cannabis stock report for Weed Talk News. Canopy Growth Corp reported its fiscal third quarter. The report was better than what analysts had expected. Remember, I recently mentioned it had a $35 million private placement to use towards debt. Well, let's look at the balance sheet because they try to make these earnings calls sound like the company's doing amazing. They had $186 million in cash and short-term investments and a total debt of $612 million. That's right, $612 million in debt. That is a result of a net debt balance of $426 million. Let's see how the stock chart looks. It's trading around $3.59, and it took a nice dip, but it looks like it's bottoming out and curling up. So be sure to watch for dips. And these cannabis stocks are not investments. They are quick trades. So make sure you trade smart. And like I say, all these big MSOs are run by groups that do not fully understand the cannabis industry. Not only do you have to be a great business person, you must know the cannabis industry inside and out. And not many people do. They think they do, but all they're doing is just burning through cash because of all the poor advisors that they're listening to. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report. Reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Doug Miller.
In New Jersey, the Garden State has made a huge milestone with the opening of its 100th dispensary. That's it for Weed Talk News this week. I'm Alaina Pinto, and remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. I'll see you next time.